Do you agree that education is a lifelong process? Or do you believe that education ends when you graduated and got a job? Good evening, I am Jonairah Alingan and I'm going to discuss about educational psychology, its historical background, and its goals. So let's start with the founders of educational psychology. First is William James. After the launching of his book, Principles of Psychology, William James had conducted a series of lectures which he called Talks to Teachers. These lectures involved the discussion on the application of psychology to educating children. William James also argued that scientific researches or laboratory researches were not sufficient in determining the effectiveness of learning. He recommends that teachers should start their lessons at the point just beyond the child's knowledge. This is in order to stretch the child's mind. So that's for William James. Let's proceed with John Dewey. Aside from this being the first to establish the first educational psychology laboratory in the United States, John Dewey is known for his concept for the child as an active learner. That is, in order for a student to learn effectively, he or she should be actively participating or be actively exposed to the environment. So before Dewey, it was believed that children should just sit in their chairs and listen to the teachers passively and then learn rotely. So he opposed to this system. Another is that John Dewey is was one of those psychologists who had pushed for equal rights to decent education. During his time, only boys from wealthy families were exclusively allowed to go to school. So he was one of those psychologists who had pushed for equal rights to education, competent education. So that's for John Dewey. Next is Edward Thorndike. Edward Thorndike is known in the field of educational psychology for his emphasis on assessment and measurement. According to him, educational psychology has a scientific basis and should therefore put a strong focus on the measurement. Okay, so these three were among those founders of the field of educational psychology. So what is educational psychology? To define, educational psychology is the branch of psychology that specializes at understanding teaching and learning in the educational setting. So this involves the teacher-student relationship issue, classroom management issue, teaching strategies, and so on. So the goals of educational psychology is to promote effective teaching and to promote professional growth. So the question first is educational psychology an art or a science? So since Thorndike argued that educational psychology has a scientific basis, it is science in such way. And also, one aim of educational psychology is to provide us, particularly the teachers, researchers, scientific researchers, in order to help them enhance their teaching strategies. So, in such way, educational psychology is a science. But let us remember that scientific knowledge is not enough. Scientific knowledge is not enough in informing us about all the possible issues, all the possible phenomena that we may encounter inside or along our teaching process. So, of course, teachers should make some important judgments regarding the dynamics inside the classroom, regarding the conflicts inside the classroom, and regarding on how he or she will be teaching. So this is when educational psychology becomes an art. Therefore, educational psychology is both a science and an art. So let's go to the effective teaching, the aim of educational psychology. So what are the factors underlying this aim? Okay, so first and foremost, before a teacher could impose his style of teaching that is impulsive or her strategy in teaching, social and ethical matters should be considered. When we say social and ethical matters, teachers should not, or teachers should ensure that they are not imposing an act of injustice or unfairness or any unethical act inside the room or towards the student. So studies show that teachers tend to give more chances of participation, more chances of acquiring grades, or higher consideration, more patience to boy students than to girl students. So in such manner, intentionally or unintentionally, some teachers are already imposing injustice inside the classroom or towards his or her students. So that is a crucial factor. And also, to be an effective teacher, as a teacher, one should expect that the classroom will be composed of different characteristics, different personalities, different strengths, different weaknesses, and so on. So the teacher should look at his classroom as a diverse mosaic of students. And it's not only looking at your classroom as a diverse mosaic of students. A teacher, to be effective or to be an effective teacher, he or she should be flexible and sensitive to this diversity inside the classroom. So that's a factor in promoting effective teaching. So there was this research involving 1,000 respondents, particularly students aged from 13 to 17 years old, that were asked about what are the characteristics of an effective teacher. So there were top three results. There were top three characteristics of an effective teacher. So according to that research, the top three characteristics of an effective teacher were: first, an effective teacher should have a sense of humor. Next, an effective teacher should know how to make the class interesting or can make the class interesting. And third, an effective teacher should have an in-depth knowledge about the subject matter or about teaching. Okay, so when you say about in-depth knowledge about the subject matter, so of course there is this professional knowledge skills. Professional knowledge skills is needed. And also, in here arises the type or the style of the teacher in teaching, the instructional strategies used by the teacher in teaching. So there's this strategy called constructivism. Constructivism is a principle in teaching strategy that stresses that individuals actively construct their knowledge and understanding. So this somehow stems from the thought of the early proponents that the person or the child is an active learner, or in order to learn effectively, a person should actively be participating in the environment. Okay, so that's for the instructional constructivism, instructional strategy. Mainly, constructivism is used by many teachers nowadays. Then, okay, so that's for the factors underlying effective teaching. Next next goal of educational psychology is to promote professional growth. When you say professional growth, the issue arises whether when you are a professional, does learning end there or does education end there? So there's this saying by Julie Payette, a Canadian astronaut, which he emphasized that learning or education is a motion. It means it does not end. It is continuous. So, according to this saying, it doesn't mean that you are a teacher, learning ends, or there's nothing to learn anymore. So as a teacher, of course, you may learn from your personal experiences inside and outside the classroom, and you may also learn from the wisdom of those who are more experienced than you are. So that's what we call professional growth. A teacher should recognize the fact or the thought that learning or education is a continuous or an unending process. Okay, so that's for the factors, or that's the aim of or goals of educational psychology. Effective teaching, promote effective teaching, and promote professional growth. So, okay, we have mentioned earlier that educational psychology is a science in a way that it aims to provide especially the teachers, researchers on regarding how to handle or regarding effective strategies in teaching. So let's proceed to research in educational psychology. So why is research, or why are researchers relevant or needed in the field of educational psychology? So as I have said earlier, educational psychologists or teachers use or make use of scientific researches on effective teaching in order for them to enhance their teaching strategy and their classroom management or the like. So, of course, they use these researches for decision making on what strategies they should use. Yes, teachers may make subjective or personal judgments about how they will conduct or how they will impose their learning or teaching strategy, but in order for them to reduce the likelihood that this is based only on their subjective presumptions and it may not be effective, so they may make use of scientific research. Of course, we know that scientific research is objective, systematic. It reduces the likelihood that the study or the assumption is based on the subjective personal experience of the teacher. So, for when we say scientific research, scientific method is involved. So there are steps in scientific method. So first is conceptualizing the problem. So you're going to conceptualize the problem, observe your classroom, conceptualize the problem. And when you have your problem now, of course, you have to formulate your hypothesis. Hypothesis, or in this step, you will need or you may make use of theories or concepts that will support such problems. So what are theories? Okay, theories are interrelated set of ideas that are explaining some or particular phenomena. So that is a theory. So after you have formulated your hypothesis, you go to data gathering or data collection. So after data collection, you are going to get the results using statistical methods. And after the results, you have your conclusion. And the final stage, of course, is revision, if there are necessary revisions on your conclusion. Okay, so that's for scientific methods. So research in educational psychology may be classified as quantitative or qualitative, or in terms of cross-sectional versus longitudinal. Okay, so quantitative research are primarily experimental. They are experimental. And on the other hand, qualitative research are non-experimental. Non-experimental, and it aims only at describing the variables being studied or the variables involved in a study. So that's for qualitative versus quantitative. Next, in terms of life or time span, research may be classified into cross-sectional versus longitudinal. Cross-sectional involves different groups of people studied at one time only. Different groups of people studied at one time only. And in contrast, longitudinal studies involve one group of people studied at different times. So an example of a cross-sectional study is, for example, you're going to study the sport activeness into sport by the students or pupils from grade 4, grade 5, and grade 6. So if you are going to use cross-sectional study, you study the grade 4, grade 5, and grade 6 at that time, one time. You study them on one time only, then you compare the data collected. Okay? And for longitudinal, you're going to, of course, you're a students will only be the grade 4. You start for the grade 4, from the grade 4, of course. Then, you assess them on that time. Then, when they're grade 5, you assess them again, and then on grade 6, you assess them again. So that is basically now. One group studies at different times. So that is the issues, or that is the research in educational psychology. So this ends my report. And okay, to end, I'm going to ask you again.